Hello and welcome back to the Scale Ups and Hypergrowth podcast with me, Marcus Kauke. Today, I have John Deloge, who is the global head of channels for 8x8, and he is responsible for driving channel sales within 8x8. They are experiencing meteoric growth. And JD, can you give a quick introduction to who you are?
Marcus Kauke, it's so good to be with you. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of the podcast. I think Mr. Schodorf on here not too long ago, and just really good stuff. I love your show, and thanks for having me. Yes, I run all of channel sales globally for 8x8. Very excited to be here at 8x8. This is my second year next month, and so I am the president of Channel Partners Fan Club. That's what I do, and very, very excited about the growth we've seen in the channel here at 8x8.
What sort of growth are you experiencing?
Well, it's been a fun ride. It's up to this past quarter, it's been 5 quarters in a row. Incredible growth, 60% year over year, quarter over quarter growth in the channel. And truly we went from nowhere in the channel to somewhere in the channel. And now we're really have crossed over that line as a preferred supplier around cloud communications globally. So it's been really fun.
I always equate channel sales to a bit like herding cats on steroids. And I'm absolutely of the opinion that selling through partners is the hardest, the toughest sales job there is. You don't hire, you don't fire, you don't drive their comp plan. And trying to get third parties who are selling for their own reasons to sell your stuff. So how do you manage to achieve that level of meteoric growth without the wheels coming off?
No, I hear you. Somebody once asked me once before, basically the same question. And I said I could answer it 3 different ways. It's 1, the people, 2, the people, and 3, the people. It's all relational. It really, truly is. Now, you got to perform, you know that. And you have to have a program that makes sense, that's fit for purpose, where channel partners are enabled and educated and awarded. Channel partners are like us, they're salespeople. They like recognition and they like money. But it's truly relational. I've been able to put the right team in place here in the US, in the UK, in ANZ, that really, really digs in to the culture, the cult of personality of channel partners. So it's all relational, Marcus. To me, that's where it starts and stops.
I definitely want to explore this in a bit more detail, but tell me this. What are the 4 most common questions that you get asked about growing a channel at pace internationally without everything falling apart and still being able to hit your targets or even exceed them and stay on track?
It's pretty basic stuff. I know you're going to ask me in a few minutes some questions around who I'm reading probably and following and those sorts of things. One of the books I read a long, long time ago was a book by a gentleman by the name of John Wooden, who, if you don't know John Wooden, he was a head basketball coach at the University of California, Los Angeles, UCLA, here in the States. And, he started every single season by teaching his players how to tie their shoes the same way and put on their socks the same way and dress the same. And it's kind of silly, but if you think about it, building a channel partner program globally could be so overwhelming and daunting just thinking about that process. And so I break it down into 3 or 4 things, as you've asked. The first thing is you have to have people fit for purpose. You have to have leadership in place that understand the channel. By the way, there's common red threads in all of those people. I celebrate their differences. I want them to know more than me every time. And I also am very cognizant, especially globally, of the different nuances by theater. My leader in the UK, Keith Jackson, is very different than my leader, Bobby Hall, here in the US. Michelle Marlin, down in Australia, very different than both of those guys. But they all bring something unique to the table. So leaders fit for purpose. The second thing I would say, and really, really, really important, is a program fit for purpose. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There are basics of a channel partner program that if you use a little common sense and you apply yourself, know that channel partners, they want to be enabled. They want it easy to sell your stuff. They want you to educate them. They want to be coherent and be very knowledgeable on what you bring to the table. And then ultimately you have to reward them. And so the rewards program is very, very important. So that's probably more than three things. But to me, it's very simple stuff, kind of that John Wooden philosophy. You bring in the right people, don't reinvent the wheel. You put the right program in place. Lastly, I'll tell you that it's not all going to happen at once. It's taken me 2 years to really get the channel partner program at 8x8 globally humming. And that's been a good thing. Lastly, I will tell you this. If you don't have executive sponsorship, if your CEO, my CEO, Vic Verma, is a sold out fan of the channel, just Google him, look on LinkedIn, listen to his remarks around the channel. If you don't have that executive sponsorship, forget about the first three things and move on to the next company. So
I have to agree with you. Often channel is the gingerhead, bastard, ugly stepdaughter of direct sales. And it's such a shame because it's really an area where you need to be really scarred. You have to have a lot of experience in scar tissue to be successful at. Unfortunately, what tends to happen in my experience is it's where Tim Nice but Dim gets sent to die because he's failed in direct sales. And it's where you send your greenhorn salespeople to cut their teeth. And it's entirely the wrong thing. When you're dealing with some grizzled 58-year-old owner of an MSP who's working 80, 90 hours a week, they've already got the yacht. And some snot-nose turns up and says, so, John, what are you going to do for me this year? They're going to get kicked out. And the problem is that I think very few vendors really get, and this is an issue that stems from the top, very few vendors really get that you have to be partner-centric. Your partners are your best customers. One partner could be worth 50 end users. So why is it that leadership hasn't cottoned on to the incredible power of channel?
That's a really good question. And quite frankly, if we come up with an award-winning answer, we might not have to do any more podcasts. I mean, it's a good, Marcus, it's a good one. Let me just say this to you, from me. First of all, to me, per your point, it's always been about common sense. If I can teach 10 people to go fishing for me, instead of going fishing all day myself, and they're going to catch one fish each, I'm ahead of the game. Like common sense, first of all, if you can achieve the things we talked about before. I think the reason why that most leaders miss it is because they haven't had the exposure. I'm a little bit different in this way. So I started a company out of college that became the number one system integration and application development company for Avaya in the US. I sold that company to a VAR. So I went from a services company to a VAR, one of Avaya's largest VARs in the US, ran that company for ownership. We sold that to Arrow Electronics, global distributor that I know you're familiar with. So now I got exposure and distribution. And oh, by the way, at Arrow, I ran their global sales team, which primarily was a direct team with a channel play. My point is this: I had exposure, a well-rounded look at all of these routes to market, and realized pretty quickly that channel is where it's at. Like, why would you not utilize this group of sellers? And I think that a lot of folks that sit in the leadership positions, they've gone to great schools and they maybe came up through the ranks in a consulting firm. Maybe they got a job with IBM back in the old days, whatever it is. They just haven't been exposed to the channel. And so I think it's ignorance. I really do. I will tell you, my CEO, Vic Verma, is anything but ignorant. He is a brilliant man and has given me an incredible opportunity and positioned 8x8 incredibly with the channel. But Vic will admit to you that he didn't fully understand the power of the channel. Now, here's what I did, Marcus. It's a windy answer, sorry. Here's what I did with Vic. Vic said, JD, you got an opportunity. I want you to build this channel partner program. I want you to do it globally. Come in and get it done for 8x8. Will you accept the challenge? I said, I'll accept the challenge on one condition. One condition. In my first month on the job, that you hit the road with me. I want you to meet the partners. I want you to see what I see out there. That's all it took, Marcus. Once he did that, once he made that commitment, it was incredible. The rest is history.
And it's about raising awareness. I'm reminded of George Carlin's quote, which is, when you think about how stupid the average person is and realize half of them are stupider than that. And you certainly see that out in the sales world. So again, getting executive sponsorship is absolutely key. And if you look at the difference a great channel chief can make to the valuation of your business, if this isn't compelling enough evidence, Datto and ConnectWise both IPO'd for $1.5 billion. Their nearest competitors IPO'd for 100 million. Now, both of them had fantastic channel chiefs that drove amazing global channel programs. And that was this major significant difference between them and the next organization, because product-wise, pretty much the same. Yeah, a little bit of difference, but widget's a widget. And so tell me this, what makes for a fantastic channel chief? This is your chance to blow your own trumpet.
That's another, you asked some good questions. Outside of my ravishing good looks, that's a joke, by the way.
It's not that bad if you're listening.
Thanks, Marcus. I would say a couple things. I'd say the first thing is you have to be patient. You have to know that this is a marathon and not a sprint. And it's going to take a while to truly enable the partner community. First of all, for some people, like with me at 8x8, it was showing up. You mentioned earlier about how, some suppliers kind of are half pregnant on a channel program. And so they'll dip in and dip out. They'll show up when there's a deal. They'll leave when there isn't one. This is a marathon, not a sprint. You have to be patient and you have to show up. And so I will tell you, my first year on the job here at 8x8, ask anyone. And you can ask anybody in the UK, you can ask anybody in the US. There wasn't a show that I didn't attend. There wasn't a beer or a pint that I didn't have. Many, many dinners. The day starts at 7 and it ends at 1 a.m. And you really have to show up. You have to be patient. I think the second thing is you have to trust your people. I try to surround myself with a team that is better than me. There's no ego here. I want iron sharpens iron. I want my team to know more than I know in geography in London, more than I know in geography in California, in Florida, wherever it is. I want them to be the experts. So I think the second thing is for sure surrounding yourself with the right team. I continue to pick up team members along the way, Marcus, but I've got 5, 6, 7, 8 guys and gals that have been with me. This is our 4th, 5th, 6th company together because they know the program, they know the offense, they know the playbook. So you're surrounding yourself with good people. And then the last thing I would say is it goes back to that executive sponsorship. You have to put yourself in an environment where I'm not trying to convince my board and my CEO and the leadership team that channel is the way to go. They've got to have a crisis of belief. There has to be something there. Now, I know there's going to be some naysayers. I know some of them might kind of just believe it, but in general, I think they have to be committed to that because, again, back to number one, it takes some time.
This then brings me to another major issue, which is that with COVID, there is a very high probability that if you're going to get in a hermetically sealed aluminium tube and fly halfway across the world, you're going to end up with 2 weeks of quarantine when you land. Then you're going to have your meeting. Then you're going to fly back and you're going to have 2 weeks of quarantine. So I cannot imagine there are many salespeople, channel managers, channel chiefs, even customers who will be willing to put themselves through that. So I was speaking to Jay McBain from Forrester a couple of weeks ago for my podcast, and he was saying that he's seen this has moved virtualization, digitization forward 10 years. And there's a new reality that's going to happen, which is that most salespeople are going to have to get used to using platforms like 8x8 in order to communicate with their customers and with their partners. Now, a partner can hop in the car and pop up the road to go and speak to a customer. So I think it's going to radically change the profession of selling, and it's going to bias organizations towards the channel, towards partnerships and alliances where we train our partners as if they are our own, and we train them to sell. Product knowledge is fine and dandy, but its only value in the sale is to help you ask the right kind of questions. And the problem that I see in tech across the board is that very few organizations really invest in constant, ongoing reinforcement sales training with their partners. And I think this is where there will be a massive shift, because you're going to have to probably furlough a large chunk of your direct sales force. Many of them are going to move onto virtual platforms. They're not necessarily going to translate well. And so you're still going to have to make those sales because your investors and your shareholders still want those numbers. You still want to make your exit. So what are you guys doing in order to drive more sales training into your channel?
Really good points. And I've actually had these discussions with Jay as well. And it's really going to separate, I think, the top suppliers from the bottom end as we continue to move forward in this pandemic. First of all, let me start out by saying it this way. I believe that we're going into this golden age of communications for all the wrong reasons. It is what it is. We got here. Here we are. It used to be a company goes out and starts, their organization. What's the first thing they do? They go to look for space, commercial real estate. I wouldn't
want to be selling that in the future.
Amen, right? I would suggest to you that as we move forward, when you start a company today, the very first thing you're going to do is look for a communications platform. Now, fortunately for me, I work for a company that in my mind, and of course I get paid to say it, but I believe the facts show it. We have the most reliable, the most secure, one of the most well-known platforms globally that provides everything from voice to meetings to collaboration to video, now CPaaS, et cetera. All those things being said, it means nothing if you don't train your partners and enable your partners to take your stuff to market. So we have set up here in the channel, I have this incredible head of engineering. His name is Jamal Savoir, who owns engineering for me all over the world. He's helped with our enablement team at 8x8 set up something called 8x8 University, where we bring our partners in virtually on our platform and put them through pretty rigorous trainings. Our masters, our subs, and our VARs, our wholesale partners, are all required to go through these certification processes. Now, Marcus, those things can be very boring and very laborious and very redundant and very, quite frankly, annoying. So we try to spruce it up. We have fun videos in there. We have parodies. I'm a music fanatic. So every now and then I'll grab my guitar and give them a little ditty. Like, we do some really fun things to make it interesting, but we are very, very committed to making sure that our partners are trained, educated, enabled, and ready to go to market with 8x8's platform.
So let me take that a little bit further. Obviously, in the old days, that was a month ago, you could do ride-alongs. How are you adapting and how are your channel managers adapting to the ride-along process?
Yeah, it's a tough one for everyone, right? I think here in the US, very similar to the UK, we're doing a lot of virtual everything, as you know. So I think there's a little bit of role playing going on in terms of what we do and how we do it over our platform. Everything from a virtual ride-along to a virtual happy hour, really connecting with those partners and continuing to show our stuff. Now, remember, with the 8x8 platform, I can show documents. I can record the conversation. It's persistent. I can bring in video. I can show them things on the fly, very, very similar to as if I was sitting right next door to them. So it's been pretty effective so far.
I interviewed Ryan Longfield for a previous episode from Gong. And one of the things that really, I think, is a massive opportunity. Personally, I think COVID represents the best opportunity any professional seller or any professional channel manager or leader can possibly dream of. It's a fantastic opportunity. Now, every conversation is online or you can record it electronically. Every mistake a salesperson makes using technologies like Gong or Refract and technologies like that represents a learning and a coachable moment. And I think one of the things that's always fascinated me about our profession is that you hear people who say they have 20 years experience, but what they really have is 1 year's experience 20 times over. And they haven't learned anything. They become functionally illiterate when they left school. They read the tabloid newspapers and they don't really invest in themselves. What I'm seeing now, I've picked up a load of clients who are really ambitious salespeople who are taking this opportunity to better themselves and really raise their game. So when they come out of this, then they're going to be stronger, faster, leaner, and able to develop. Now, again, those kind of technologies in the channel can be incredibly potent. So I'm curious again, how are you guys able to use those at the moment, or are you looking at investing in them?
Oh no, we're investing with all kind of online technologies from an education perspective, and not only self-paced videos and tutorials around our products, but value-based selling, all the basic type things that you're able to participate in. And it's really an interesting phenomenon. Something you just said made me think of this, and it's so true. I just read an article that said that we are working 20% more since COVID started, 20% more. And why? Because it's available. I can't walk by this office here at my home and not sit down and check in on you and see what's going on. Who has messaged me? Where are our numbers? Are there any partner issues? What's going on LinkedIn, et cetera, et cetera. The availability of our partners and the availability and willingness to learn from our partners is incredible. So if you don't have tools, if you don't have those kinds of things to deliver to them, they're going to look somewhere else. So I can tell you myself, I've completed every single HR loves me right now, which is a miracle at our company, because I have actually completed every single tutorial, every class they've sent me internally, because I have the time to do it. So I think, again, to your point, in a very tasteful way, obviously, I tell my team, don't apologize that we have a warehouse of water and we're in a drought. It's what it is. And so we're fortunate that we're part of 8x8, we're part of the platform, we're part of the company, and we do have the kind of tools you're talking about to deliver to our partners.
I use the opposite analogy, which is that there's a heavy rainstorm and I'm selling umbrellas and galoshes.
Well, that's always where you are. There's lots of rainstorms.
Fair point. Okay. So let's take this conversation a little bit deeper then. I'm curious, what are the questions that people should be asking, but they're not, about growing a fast-paced, hyper-growth channel in tech?
Another really good one. I think one question that it really gets skipped quite a bit, and it's a very simple concept, is they want all of the rewards and all the spoils without putting in the investment, the time, the energy, the things that you talked about before. So for me, it kind of goes back to one of the questions you asked earlier, which is everybody wants to get to the end without starting at the beginning, which is just a crazy thing. What questions should they be asking? They should be asking, again, what are the color of the socks, the color of the shoelaces, the color of the shoes, and how do I put them together in uniformity with the rest of the team? That, to me, is the analogy I used earlier and where it starts. What are the key elements to jumping into a channel and effectively putting that program together? I think you're asking the right questions to me. If you're not asking those kinds of questions up front, then how in the world could you ever get to a world-class channel organization? You can't, is the answer. So again, I appreciate that a lot of my competition doesn't ask those questions. Believe me.
I have what can only be described as a slightly shitty question there to come your way. JD, are you familiar with something called Price's Law?
No, I'm not, actually.
Price's Law is basically 80-20ing the top and bottom 20%. And it states that 50% of your production, your results, your profit, your complaints, your hassle will come from the square root of the number of people or partners that you have in your organization. So if you have 10 partners, 3 will produce 50%. If you have 100, 10 will produce 50%. If you have 10,000, 100 will produce 50%. So talent grows in a linear manner, and whining, moaning, grumbling, and incompetence grows exponentially. Now, it may not be the same within 8x8, but in virtually every other channel I've ever engaged with, 2 to 4% of the partners generate between 40 to 60% of the revenue. So my question is this: if you are experiencing that, is there not a fantastic argument and an opportunity now to look at those top 50% producers and say, okay, if we redeployed all of the resources, the budget, the pipeline that the bottom 50% producers are producing, and put that into the hands of that special forces unit of partners, and then use that capital to invest in a good lead generation engine, so really top-class SDRs, a fantastic marketing engine, and then invested the rest in training and also in recruiting more partners like those top 50% producers. Now, I don't imagine I'm going to be very popular with a lot of partners, or a lot of organizations out there. But what do you think of the concept?
No, I think it's spot on. Quite frankly, we do it. We literally do it. We measure and watch these things on a quarterly basis. Let me give you an example. I'll give you an example for the US part of the audience. And so in the US today, we have in our master, we go to market across the board, whether it's VAR, master sub, affiliate, alternative channel, alliance partners, all this stuff. But let's talk specifically around master subs in the US. We have in our program, and I'm not embarrassed to ever say this, 15 masters. That's probably 3 too many, by the way. We have 15 masters only in our program in the US. Now think about that. You can go online right now. We're New York Stock Exchange traded. Everybody can look at our market cap. You can look at the incredible growth, the numbers we put up over the last 2 years. 15 masters, Marcus. That's it. Of those 15 masters, to your point, spot on, 5 of them make up 70% of the revenue. 5. Now, I will tell you this. We have a program called Elevate, which is our channel partner program globally. So those master subs in the Elevate program in the US have criteria that they have to meet as a minimum. In addition to that criteria, instead of just continually whipping them, we give them carrots all the way up the food chain to become that number one. And we constantly measure it. So quarterly, we pay out incredible spiffs, kind of table stakes. We pay out really cool incentives based on growth, really cool incentives based on training and certifications and those types of things. And we monitor it. The ones that aren't stepping up and stepping into that, it won't take long for us to say bye-bye. We take those resources and we absolutely use them exactly where you just said. Lead gen, better SDR, ADRs, different kind of campaigns throughout the country. And literally, these guys will tell you all the time. I stand on the stage, I give a lot of keynotes. I will never apologize, ever, for constantly mentioning, constantly awarding, and giving to the top of the heap, the cream of the crop within our organization from a partner perspective. I won't do it.
Neither should you. And one of the things I've noticed about the best leaders in the channel and the best sales leaders and generally the best leaders is they are huge on recognition. They surround themselves with talent that's better than them. They have the intellectual humility to be willing to be coached and developed. I interviewed Dr. Jeff McGee a while back, and one of the things he said, which I thought was really insightful, is that you should have a chief learning officer whose primary job is coaching and developing the senior leadership team, because then that filters down. Unlike tax cuts, it actually trickles down to the bottom of the organization. So I'm really curious about your philosophy around coaching. How much time do you spend coaching yourself? What do you encourage your people to do in your management and leadership roles?
We have everything from the basics of a leadership development program here at 8x8, where we immediately assess and understand where our employees rank in terms of talent. We look at hypos. We look for those opportunities to take somebody out of a contact center that we think could be a CEO of a company someday. So basics around leadership development always are focused on that. I will tell you that I have folks on my staff that lead droves of people in massive programs that started out at the receptionist desk. And, you could tell out of the gate that person just had it. They needed a chance. We just did a bunch of awards with our sales kickoff here from our previous year. Our rookie of the year in the US, our rookie of the year in the UK didn't even come from our industry. We brought them in because we saw the potential. That all said, I love the word you use. You have to have the humility and you have to have the recognition of oneself to know that you always can be better. For me personally, I constantly surround myself with men and women that know stuff that I don't. You've had a few of your guests on your show. Tom Schodorf is a great example of this. I met with Tom regularly. How could you not take advantage of that opportunity? A guy that took slack from nowhere to a global leader in communication. So I try to put myself in that kind of position that I listen and learn both formally and informally from leaders that have been there before me, and quite frankly, some of them that have been there after me. I don't get caught up on youth versus, you don't got to be 70 years old to mentor Delosier or teach him something. And I certainly don't get caught up on position, which I think is a big mistake. So for me, it's really about getting better and constantly immersing myself with opportunity to learn.
It's really interesting. One of the qualities that I always look for in salespeople and in channel folks is vulnerability. And what's really interesting is people misunderstand it. It derives from the Latin word vulnerabilis, which means to make yourself woundable, to put yourself in a position where you could be hurt and to do it anyway. And it was always in Latin, it was a sign of courage. And I think one of the most important qualities that I see in great leaders is that they are willing to learn, they're willing to take risk. They recognize that people from below them in the chain of command can teach them as well. What are the best lessons that you've learned from people who report to you or through that chain of command? I'd love to find out about that.
There's many lessons. One of my favorite all-time movies, you'll see this on some of social media, I put this out there. One of my favorite all-time movies is the movie Gladiator. I love that movie. I'm sure you've seen it. Yeah. And Russell Crowe, just the portrayal of Maximus Aurelius in this movie was just absolutely phenomenal. A general, the strongest army in the world, who went from having everything to nothing and then climbed his way out of that hole. One of the things that happens in that movie is as Maximus leads, the movie starts with, it's the final war basically for the Roman Empire. And if they defeat this enemy, they all get to go home to peace and harmony and love and meals and drink and all that stuff. We know it turns out differently, but he leans down before the battle, as he does in every battle, including the arena when he becomes a gladiator, and he grabs the dirt and he rubs it in his hands. He feels the dirt. And so I always tell my team, feel the dirt. And I always tell them that, not just because I love the movie, because I've observed and learned at every level in our organization and every organization I've been a part of, the people that feel the dirt, people that are in the weeds, sometimes they're shadow people, Marcus. We walk right by them and we don't even know, right? But the people that dig in and understand their environment and anything and everything around them before they go into the battle, those are the people that I want to surround myself with. And so I try to feel the dirt. I try to listen and learn from those folks that are the subject matter experts in our organization and throughout the world. That probably is the number one thing for me. I really am interested and always have been this way of having a conversation with Vic Verma, our CEO, sitting in his office, formally or informally, for hours, shooting the breeze. But I also will go downstairs and I'll sit with our janitor for an hour and talk to him about the building and what is he seeing, what's going on over here, and tell me about your life. I think that's the key. Get with the folks that have been in the dirt, feel the dirt, know their environment.
Very interesting. I released a podcast interview today with Tom Castley. And one of the things he said, and it was also echoed in the conversation with Tom Schodorf, is that it's almost never the top sales performer that makes the great manager. And Tom Castley's observation was that the best managers were often the ones who didn't have the highest revenue, but they had the highest account portfolio penetration, because it meant that they got deep and wide within the organization. They listened, they paid attention, that what they were looking at was the customer's best interest rather than the selfish self-interest. Top producers are great, but they're not necessarily wired for great management. And what you normally find is your boss gets fired, you get tapped on the shoulder, and they say, JV, congratulations, you're a manager now. And there isn't that ramp-up period. So you go from being a producer to being a manager, and you do what was done to you and what you're familiar with. So then they spend their time doing and telling and showing instead of helping people to evolve and develop themselves. And so what I'm really curious about is, in terms of the career path that you've seen the best channel managers go through, what sort of red threads run through their career paths that get them to the point where they are amazing producers in the channel? When they phone their partners, they pick up because they know there's going to be value at the other end of that call.
So a couple things there. One thing is that some of our best channel managers at 8x8 work for channel partners. And so they know the partner. They know the partner community. They know the challenges with suppliers like 8x8. They understand sometimes the level of ranking with the direct salesperson and the channel salesperson and these foolish silos that we've built. And so I would say number one, some of our best channel managers, some of the best ones that I've seen come from the channel partner community. They were a partner at one point, or they work for a partner, so they understand how it works. So now, kind of on this side of the fence, they know how to treat them. I think that's why I've been pretty successful. I always tell the channel partner community, remember that movie, another movie for you. I don't know if you ever saw it with Leo DiCaprio, Catch Me If You Can.
Yeah.
With Frank Avengale, the guy that was writing the checks. And then what happens? He ends up working for the FBI. And when he works for the FBI, their close rate, their arrest rate goes through the roof. Why? Because he knows how to con people. And so he knows what to look for. Now, I don't want to compare the channel to con artists. That's a bad comparison. Although at times maybe we have to, do our thing. But I would say that those are the best channel managers, the ones that have been there before. Second thing I would say, and it's probably general for all industry really, I've seen that the best channel managers are the ones that check their ego at the door and they're willing to learn. A lot of what we talked about earlier, they're hungry, they're willing to learn, and they're willing to fail. I said to my team the other day, they asked me what was my biggest regret in our last fiscal year, and what I would do differently. And I couldn't pin it to one thing, but I said, my worst fear is inaction. And it should be your worst fear as well. Take the swing, man. Jump in the arena, take the action. If you fail, you fail. But the worst thing you can do is not take it. And so I found another thing with channel managers that are the most successful is they're willing to jump in, they're willing to take risks, they're willing to fail forward. So I would say those are the few things.
Have you read Ray Dalio's book, Principles?
I haven't.
Fabulous book. It's really well worth it. Now, Ray runs the world's largest privately owned hedge fund. And one of the qualities that he's built into their culture is a culture of embracing failure and risk. You never get punished for taking the risk. You only get punished if you try and hide the mistake. And they keep a failure log. And one of the things we always teach is fail fast, fail early, and fail often. And if you're not taking risk, that's basically a life without growth. And you touched on something that people leave their ego at the door. Tom Schodorf, one of the first things that he did when he took over at Splunk was when he was restructuring the culture. He had a couple of salespeople who were really massive top performers, but they had an entitlement mindset. And so he got rid of them. And what was really fascinating was the impact on morale, because if you have entitlement in your channel or in your sales team, it's a toxic, it's poisonous, and it corrupts the environment and morale. One of the other things that has come out from these interviews, which is really interesting, and there's a common theme, is a genuine frustration with the industry's tendency to over-assign quota in order to ensure that the company and the CEO and the CFO hit their bonus targets and the investors are happy. But the salespeople down on the ground, if you've got a 100 million target, if you add up all their quotas, it's 150 million. And so they're run ragged. What are your thoughts in terms of quota assignment?
Yeah, I think whenever you assign any kind of targets for anybody in your organization, especially salespeople, I want them to always be possible. And I always want them to be, in some cases, probable, but you got to work for it. I want stretch goals. So I don't want to give away anything, but the tops down, here's your envelope approach, I think is a thing of old, at least for the good companies. I really appreciate a good bottoms up view and look of what we did last year, what we did the year before, what the current market environment's like, et cetera, and having a really genuine, purposeful conversation around that with the folks in finance and truly understand the company goals and setting those goals together and agreeing on something. Nobody's handing anybody anything. It's not, hey, this is all I can do this year, or hey, you have to do this. I found that the collaborative approach from a bottoms up and tops down kind of meet in the middle thing is a good one. It doesn't always work. Sometimes companies have put themselves in a tough spot and they need to, sell their way out of it, quote unquote. And so there's all kinds of nuances to it. But I've found that you can inspire people and inspire salespeople by being very reasonable in quota setting. The worst thing you can do is a salesperson's quota was 10 in year one and they sold 20, so you make their quota 30. Or their sales quota was 10 in year one, and they sold a great deal that jacked it up to 17, and you now assign them 25. I like to take out maybe the bottom two deals and the top two deals and really figure out where the sweet spot is and really try to inspire with the quota. I also try to incent them along the way. We have fun contests quarterly. I like to put things in place where just past month, we just gave out to our top performers this month little Bose speakers. Look, that's not going to pay the mortgage. I got that. And it's not going to make them rich, but it's the thought that counts. And everybody likes a good speaker at the beach or in the bathroom when you're showering or whatever it is, right? So we try to do a lot of things along the way to let them know we care. And we also want to put a quota and some kind of financial package in front of them that inspires them to achieve, not discourages them.
Interesting. Okay. One of the other things that I see happen an awful lot is what we call delusional pipeline syndrome. How do you make sure that your channel managers are confronting the fictions within pipeline with your partners and do so in a way that's nurturing enough so that they don't throw their toys out the pram?
Yes, DPS. I'm going to definitely steal that. Delusional pipeline syndrome. I love that. That's a great concept, Marcus. You need to copyright that.
In fairness, it comes from Tom Shodorf, but he wrote a book with Sandler, so I'm stealing it. It's mine now. Give me the credit.
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually speaking to him tomorrow, so I'm going to bring it up. So a couple things, and it goes both ways, right? It's a fine line in this DPS concept. First off, we don't want you to bring us any trash and trinkets, partner, because you're trying to show your value with us. You're trying to play us maybe off against another supplier. You want to show the world that you have connection point, et cetera, et cetera. So I treat my business with my partners as a business. And we review pipeline regularly, deal registrations, qualified pipeline, SQLs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to reward them for good quality deal registrations and pipeline, et cetera, with MDF and events and marketing campaigns and leads, all that stuff. So there's a scorecard, and this is a give and take. I, as a supplier, want to do the right thing by you, Mr. Partner, and I want you to do the right thing by me. If you put me in a situation where I engage my resources and I spend a lot of money on an opportunity that I really, truly never had a chance to win, you get to do it once and you won't do it again. So that's number one. On the other side of the coin, internally, we've got our sales team, our field sales team that closes deals, right? And so we want to make sure that they have the faith in the channel that they're getting the right kind and the right types of opportunities for success. And two, we also don't want them to feel like the clock is on. We want them to be diligent in it, but we also don't want to feel like the clock is on to where they got to pick up the covers and hide the opportunities because their close rates are starting to look bad because they can't get to it. I like what you said earlier. Vic says this all the time, that if you mess up, don't try to hide it. If you're in trouble, don't try to hide it. That's where people get in trouble. So for me internally, I'm always coaching the sales executives in that, look, if you have enough, just tell us. And we'll make sure that your colleagues have enough. And let's monitor it. And let's not disqualify something or throw something away for very selfish reasons that are going to get you in trouble anyway. So to me, it's a balancing act on both sides of the equation.
One of the things I always teach my clients is that if you disqualify properly early, that's like saving a goal in football, in soccer. And often what we see is that salespeople try and fatten up their pipeline, and it ends up either looking like Dolly Parton or Kim Kardashian, and it bulges in the wrong places. Now, one of the challenges there is salespeople tend to listen with happy ears. They get attached because they need it. So what are you doing to ensure that your channel managers are helping your partners absolutely overstock their funnel with quality and they're ruthless in the disqualification?
First of all, I think from our perspective, we're very metrics driven. So the cliche and the numbers never lie. Most of the time, that's true, I think. I think that with us, if you're diligent in the way you're treating your partners in your program, for us, it's Elevate. And we treat our partners very well from lead gen perspective, MDF perspective, BDF perspective, all perspectives financially. We treat them well. And if your salespeople are showing up, and by the way, I try to introduce the sales team into the partner community every chance I get. They're invited to every show, they're invited to every webinar, all that educates and elevates that we do in our program, et cetera. If that relationship is there and you've created that culture, I think the partners tend to gravitate towards you. Now, it's not always Pollyanna. I'm not saying it's the perfect world. It's not. You know that. However, I think that we've shown up and we've built the trust with the partner community that they really understand that when they bring an opportunity to 8x8, that opportunity is going to get paid attention to. It's going to get worked hard. They have a chance to make money. And I'll end that answer with this. That's what I always say to our sales team. I always say it to our executive team. I always say it to the channel team. Partners are bringing you these opportunities not for their health. You don't pay commission on unclosed deals, right? They're bringing you these opportunities because they want a chance to make money, because they want to go on vacation this summer. That's why they're doing it. It's not just because. So if you approach it that way and presume positive every single time, you're going to see great results. Now, there's some bad eggs in there. And to your point, disqualify them early. Let's not just the leads, the partners. You want to bring us that kind of stuff, we're probably not the right supplier for you.
It's really interesting. I've done a lot of work in hospitality. And one of my clients is a major hotel in London. And they got over 1,000 inquiries from one of their partners a year. And they closed one of them because they were all completely wrong. Each one took roughly between an hour and 3 hours of a salesperson's time. So they sunk £750,000 worth of opportunity cost in doing that. When I recognized that, I said, well, why don't you just put them into spam and tell them that unless they send us one like this, there's no way we're going to take it. And as a result of that, sales went up and EBITDA was up 26%, which is pretty impressive for a hotel in central London to drive up EBITDA that way, because their salespeople were actually focused on useful, productive activity. When you think about the amount of time salespeople actually are in front of customers, Dave Brock did some research on this, and it was between 12 and 21%. So there's 88 to 79% of their time they're not in front of customers. It's your job to make sure that your partners are spending time in front of customers, and you're helping them. They're coin operated. If you're not putting money in their backs, they're going to go dark on you very quickly. So I just like to bring it right to the beginning, which is the recruitment process and the onboarding process. Talk to me about what you guys do there to ensure that you're getting the right type of partners and you're setting them up to succeed right from the get-go.
First of all, we don't throw out any quotas on recruitment. That's the first thing. So we want our partners to be very diligently recruited. We ask that our channel account managers and our national account managers go out and recruit on a regular basis. Are they measured on that and paid on that for recruitment? They are not. They're measured and paid on lead opportunity and obviously dollars closed. That said, the right personnel understand that. And so it's naturally in their best interest to bring in the best partners. And what I found is in most cases is the folks that we're bringing into the channel organization here at 8x8 have some kind of resume, have some kind of tenure. So they have the relationships with the partners at their previous places of employment, et cetera, et cetera. So we do a pretty good job with that. But to me, the recruitment part, look, you could recruit thousands of partners every year. If you don't enable them, you don't educate them, you don't certify them, you don't get them ready for prime time and give them the confidence in what you know, they'll gravitate to what they do know. And so for us, I spend the majority of the time really focusing on those internal programs that we talked about earlier. 8x8 University is a key critical part to what we're doing globally, whether you're in New Zealand or the UK or the US. We put you through as a partner this certification process. So we're assured and you're assured that you know how to sell, you know how to deploy, you know how to support, and then you have the confidence in doing all of those things. By the way, most of the time, those new partners will have a ramp period where we'll ride along with them et cetera, to make sure it's right. But we really invest in the day two part of it. Recruitment seems to come naturally. I think that based on our branding and our success and some of the great things that we have done in the channel over the last 2 years, we're getting the right looks from the right partners. But the second part of it is really critical to me.
Very interesting. Okay, a personal question. What are your best habits that help you to be successful?
That could go a lot of different ways, Marcus.
As a channel chief.
Yeah, exactly. I think, first of all, for me, it's getting away from it for a little bit. I am one of those, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've been now in this corporate world for 7 years. So I guess I'm no longer the guy that owns his own gig like you. But, for me, it's really getting away from it just a little bit. I'm a music fanatic. So I play a lot. I played guitar for a long, long time. My wife, my lovely wife, Joanna, created this room for me in our home that has 8 of my babies, not real children, but guitars on the wall. And so I'll get away a little bit and just do something completely different. I also like to play golf. I'm not that good, but I love to play. I think it's a great opportunity to go spend some time by yourself, or quite frankly, from a business perspective, get to know somebody, have a drink or two, laugh a little bit. I also listen to music in the golf cart, which some people frown upon. But, it also includes, from a professional standpoint, outside of the getting away in the personal side, truly a lot of reading. I do a lot of reading. I like to read. I like to watch podcasts, of course, and I will watch videos, et cetera. But I absorb information when I read it. And if I do that one time, I typically will educate myself and be better at what I'm trying to do.
So on that note, what are you being influenced by? What are you reading, listening to, watching? You really think other people should be paying attention to?
I got some pillars, man, that I always go back to. I want to be a little entertained. I'm not going to be the guy that's going to read the unabridged 900-page business book. Not interested. That's not who I am. But I'm a big Simon Sinek fan. I just actually jumped back into Start With Why, which is a book he wrote a while back. Because of the COVID, he's doing book club online. There's like 1 million people part of it. I've got to know him a little bit. He came and spoke at a few of our events, really like him. There's a guy named Adam Grant who is out there from Wharton School. He does some TED Talks and some really cool podcasts around extraordinary people, and just did something on procrastination, which I thought was interesting. This thesis that some of the world's most successful people are procrastinators, which is just another conversation. I also like, it's again a little lighter, but I love Malcolm Gladwell. So I just read the book Talking to Strangers. I read all of his books from Outliers to David and Goliath, et cetera, et cetera. And Talking to Strangers is really, really, truly interesting in that he really dives into the different personality types and how you truly get to know somebody. And he uses lots of examples from early World War I all the way up to current events. So those are a few of the ones I'll jump into on a regular basis.
Very interesting. I'm getting Safi Bakal on the podcast, my other podcast, and he wrote a fantastic book called Loonshots. Have you read that?
No, I have not. But I'm going to write that.
It's all about how creativity in entrepreneurial businesses eventually gets stifled as they become more bureaucratic, and how to protect the creativity and the innovation. And I would definitely recommend David Epstein's book, Range, and Matthew Syed's book, Rebel Ideas. And one of my go-tos is Just Listen by Mark Goulston. This is one of the things that I'm absolutely fascinated by. Why is it we do not teach listening as a skill? It's fundamental to our profession. And there's nothing out there of any real substance, or not on a regular basis. There's some pockets of brilliance, like Mark Goulston, but it's crazy. Just Listen is a must read. If any of you have not read it yet, and you're in sales, channel management of any description, it's a must read.
Excellent. I wrote those down. I will absolutely follow up on those.
Fabulous. Tell me this. You've got a golden ticket, and you can go and advise the idiot 23-year-old JD who was invincible, immortal, and knew everything. What advice would you give him?
Now, that is a really great question. The 23-year-old JD, what would I say to him? A couple things. I would say, first off, I would say what others think of you is really none of your business. It's their business. Don't worry about it. And just do your thing. And, you're not always going to please everybody. So what others think of you, it's none of your business. You're just a human being, and do your thing and do what you think is right. I think the second thing I would say, and it kind of sums up, what I say to my team all the time, they'll laugh. They're all going to listen to this and they're all going to laugh when I say it. But I always tell them, run the offense. Again, JD, don't play defense. Don't worry about what the defense is doing. If you believe in your playbook, you believe in what you're doing, you believe in your offense, run your offense. The rest will take care of itself.
Run to the sound of the gunfire. Don't run away from it.
That's it.
Excellent. Okay. JD, I'd love to understand what is it that you're struggling with at the moment? What are you wrestling with?
I think a couple of things, come to mind immediately. One of the things I've really struggled with is, and it's kind of, I won't say it's been solved. It certainly has not been solved, but I think all of us have struggled in this current environment. This podcast will be recorded, and we're right in the middle of, as you said, 100-year pandemic. Probably won't see one again. We'll be long gone, my friend. And, my struggle there is, how do you keep the momentum? I was really worried a month ago when we closed our fiscal year and we're going into this new one. The targets have been delivered. The expectations by my team have been set very high over the last 2 years. How do we continue that momentum? And so I won't say that I'm done struggling with that one. I'm not, but I'm feeling more confident than I did when we got into this mess. And so 30 days in, what I've realized is, if we double down on this virtual world and this virtual life, that I think that we can keep the momentum around deal registration and activity and those kinds of things. So I think, like everybody, I've struggled a little bit with COVID and really understanding how to take advantage of that and truly how to keep the momentum going for 8x8. The other thing that I would say, and I truly don't think that, I'm just telling the truth. I always tell the truth. How do you differentiate yourself in this SaaS world, in this world of cloud? Truly, why is 8x8 different, right? Because you can talk SaaS platform all day long. You could say, we're the most reliable, we're the most secure, we're the most scalable, all those kinds of things. But the truth of the matter is why? Why are you different? And so really digging in to the nuances of our company and understanding that 8x8 was a platform that was built for the cloud, wasn't a hybrid solution, as you know, in a cage somewhere with some hot lines hooked up to it. So those are the kinds of things, I think about quite a bit from a business perspective.
Tom Chedoff made a really interesting point, and it was fascinating seeing his cadence, his rhythm. And he developed a one-page document that was his operating rhythm. And it looked at how he was going to develop his people, how he was going to manage and drive revenue, and how he was going to communicate in the field. And I'm curious, have you developed something similar in terms of developing a channel management rhythm?
Yes, from a cadence is really important to me. I always tell my team, and I tell those that work with our team in the company, I tell our partners this, I don't want to be unpredictable. I want to be predictable. Now, don't confuse that. I don't want to be common. I want to always be uncommon, but I want to be predictable. I want to be trustworthy. I want our partners and our finance team, our sales organization, our competitors to know that we bring the heat, that, to your point, we run to the battle. We don't run away from it. And to do those kinds of things, to be predictable and to be consistent, you have to have some sort of cadence. So I try to look at the I and the E. First of all, what is my internal cadence? In my position, unfortunately, I have to spend a lot of time in the house at 8x8, managing horizontally, sometimes managing up, making sure it's taken care of. And then the E, the external. What am I managing externally? What am I trying to touch there? And both of those cadences they both are unique and they have different things. However, the red thread is communication and people. I always am going to go back to it. Communication. Picking up the phone. Don't fire off the email. Have you talked to 5 owners of 5 partners this week? Internally, have you spent quality time with your CFO and your CEO? Do they know what you're doing? those kinds of things. And so I can't give away all the secrets, but I do have a good cadence that I keep. It's very simple, and it's very similar to what Tom told you.
JD, thank you so much. This has been incredibly insightful. I would love to have another conversation about this because I think we've just touched the tip of the iceberg, and I'd be really curious to see how things evolve in the channel over the next 6 to 18 months. So would you be open to having another chat?
Are you kidding? Listen, we do a lot of podcasts. You know that. We do a lot of online stuff. We both do. I do a lot of speaking. Everybody has said to me, you got to get on Kalki's podcast. And finally, after Tom did it, I know we connected. And I got to tell you, man, I could talk to you all day. Very, very interesting. I can't wait someday to meet face to face over there in the UK. And I will do this with you anytime you ask me.
Excellent. We'll meet up and go out for a meal and get mildly drunk.
1,000% in, sir.
Fabulous. So, John Delogio, how do people get hold of you? Just through LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn. I'm all over the place. Google it. Google me. Look on LinkedIn. I'm pretty responsive. I try to answer any messages. Don't send me a message that says, "Hey, I've recognized your profile on LinkedIn. I've got a consult opportunity for you," or I've got, one of those things. But no, reach out on LinkedIn. I'm always available.
Fabulous. John Delogio, thank you so much. This has been an absolute pleasure and incredibly insightful. So this is Marcus Kalki signing off from the Scale Ups and Hypergrowth podcast. If you would like to be a guest, or if there's somebody you think would be a great guest who is driving sales, driving channel sales within a disruptive tech scale up, then I would love to be introduced to them. And we'll give them the same sort of warm, fluffy treatment that I'm known for. And if you want to get in touch with me, my email address is mcauchi@sandler.com. So happy selling, stay safe, and go out there and sell your socks off. Bye-bye.